Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. When I started this channel, one of the things that I wanted to do was to talk about getting into hobby gaming, and that involved sort of talking about simple ways to paint models and assemble models and things like that, and deal with those things that sometimes are perceived as barriers to entry. And it just so happened, quite fortunately, that at the time that I was trying to get my channel off the ground, still trying, by the way, like and share. Apparently I'm supposed to say that all the time and I don't. Yeah, fortunately, at the time that I was starting my channel, Games Workshop released the 8th edition of Warhammer 40,000 and happened to release 2 starter sets that are geared towards new players. So I was very lucky. And I was able to run a sort of introductory set of videos on First Strike, which was the very basic entry-level box set and a really, really good way to get started in the hobby. And then I was able to do another series of videos on No Fear, which was the next step up. And yeah, so that was quite fortunate in my part, because it enabled me to talk about getting started in the hobby, and particularly relevant, I think, is because it was also my introduction to Warhammer 40,000. Because although I've been in hobby games for many decades, I had never played Warhammer 40,000. I was a fantasy battle player. And very much into all of the Games Workshop board games, so Space Hulk and things like that. And I played several other tabletop skirmish games, but I had never ever collected a Warhammer 40,000 tabletop army or played any of the previous iterations of Warhammer 40,000 other than the evolved rule set for the original Necromunda, which was based on 2nd edition. So it was kind of new for me as well, and so I bought First Strike and No Fear and played through those so as a way to show an introduction to miniatures gaming, but also as my introduction to Warhammer 40,000. Now, those 2 starter boxes came with basic versions of the rules. It had all the rules you need to play Warhammer 40,000, but not this. This is the full Warhammer 40,000 rulebook. The rulebook you get in the 2 starter sets that I've just shown you are very cut down rules. It's all of the rules, all of the basic rules, so it's everything you need to actually play, but in a much more streamlined format for quick pick up and play, get into the hobby. If you want to go deeper into the hobby, you need this rather beautiful book. This book actually is included in the 3rd Warhammer 40,000 starter that they released, the Dark Imperium. And yeah, so you can buy that box set, and it has even more models than No Fear, a lot of the models from No Fear, and then some additional ones again, and this book. Or, in my case, having already got First Strike and No Fear, I didn't want to buy Dark Imperium and have a lot of identical models again. I'm one of those people that I'd rather pay a bit more and have different looking models than keep buying starter sets multiple times to get a large quantity of the same looking models, if that makes any kind of sense. So I chose to buy a copy. I've only just bought this. I chose to buy a copy of the rulebook separately. You can buy it separately from Games Workshop Direct. It's £35, which seems a lot for a rulebook, but it's a very beautiful rulebook, and it is much more than a rulebook. Bear in mind, if you've seen the main core rules for Warhammer 40,000, they basically fit on 8 sides of paper, and yet this book is, I actually don't know. It's what are we at? 280 pages. It's a 280 page book. So yeah, I mean, £35. It's hardback as well, and I didn't even pay £35. One of the things you can do because Dark Imperium is the starter set and it has loads and loads of miniatures and stuff, some people bought multiple versions, multiple copies, I should say, and that means they get multiple copies of the rulebook. And so if you hop onto eBay, it's actually quite easy to find a copy of the Warhammer 40,000 8th edition rules for about 20 quid. And that's an absolute steal, I think, for a hardback book of this size. And sorry, I realise it keeps flashing because I'm moving it around, and it's got this nice spot gloss detailing on the insignia on the cover, so I'm sorry if that's blinding you. But anyway, I'm yammering, and I wanted to just give you a quick look at this book. Now, I realise that I am behind the times here. Lots of people have already gone through this book online, and I think a lot of people will have already bought it. But I've only just bought it because, even though I only had the core rules, and this is a testament to the quality of those core rules and the fact that you can just have those core rules. I've been just using those up till now, and the only reason really I bought this book is because I was able to get it cheap, and I thought it would make an interesting video, and I wanted to do some more background reading, and look at some nice pretty pictures really. This book does have advanced rules as well, but I don't know how much of those I'm actually going to use, because I'm quite happy tinkering with what I've got and the core rules really. So anyway, yeah, one of the things that sometimes people complain about, one of the things that people sometimes complain about is having to buy like a rule book or whatever separately for games like Warhammer 40,000. But honestly, they're much more that it's not just like buying a rule book. It's bedtime reading. It's much more than just the rules. I mean, I'm gonna flick through this quite quickly, but I mean, you can see you get full cover. This is actually the piece of artwork they used on the box cover for First Strike, and it's a lovely piece of work. But yeah, I don't resent spending money for a rule book. Well, one, you already get the rules. If you buy one of the starter sets, you get the rules, and I believe they're still available for free download, the core rules. But this book gives you much, much more. It's got all kinds of stuff about the hobby stuff, and more of these folks in their badly posed, aren't we having fun pictures. Some of this stuff is recycled from the start playing books from the starter sets, but then you also get a lot more fluff, a lot more background, a lot more artwork. And one of the things about Warhammer 40,000 artwork is quite often the pictures are depicting epic battles, and you can look at these pictures for a very long time and just keep seeing new stuff. There's dudes on horses. Don't fancy the chances. That's a Titan in the background. Sorry, I've just wobbled the camera. That's a Titan. That's like a walking city of destruction. So yeah, you can just look at these pictures for a long time. And then you've got all this background, the Imperium of Man and all that other stuff. And it talks all about the Space Marines and the other races, the ages of mankind, the history of the evolution of the universe to get sort of where we are now in the game setting. And this goes on and on and on and on and on. It talks about the Space Marines gene seeds. It's got colours of the different chapters, a little bit of history about them. Blood Angels. I'm a fan of the Blood Angels to a certain degree, although in games they tend to have special rules that I don't like very much. They tend to hurt themselves to get better at things, or they're quite high risk. Adeptus Mechanicus. You got all the stuff about the Titans. the knights, I should say, Imperial Knights, assassins, and of course you're getting lots of artwork, but also lots of really, really beautifully painted miniatures, which is inspirational, and see it as inspiration. Don't see it as a challenge, especially if you're new to painting. Your models, unless you have a natural talent, will not immediately look as wonderful as these. But you're paying money for a book. You don't want to see amateur painting jobs. You want to see beautiful painting jobs, and you want to see what is possible with time and effort and dedication. But you also have to, for me personally, I'm not going to say for you, it might be different for you, but for me personally, I accepted many years ago that my painting is never going to be of a caliber even halfway towards what you see in these books, and I don't care. I paint to a standard that I am happy with, and that is the standard that everybody should paint to. Everybody should be aiming to be happy with what they've done, be proud of what they've done, and not to compare it to people who get paid to do it for a living, for publication around the world. You're setting yourself a bar that's too high. If you look at this and go, there's no point in me getting into hobby gaming because my models will never look like that, you're missing the point. And you're setting your goals wrong. And we're still going. Models and all the different races. And all the different aliens. Some beautiful stuff here. Bear in mind, remember, this is a rule book. We are currently over 100 pages in, and there has not been a rule yet. We are still into the history of the races, Harlequins, the Necrons. Necrons are just coming back in a big way, so that's exciting for the Necron fans. Orcs. I'm a fan of the greenskins. I do like Space Marines. I am one of those people that actually does like Ultramarines. I know that Ultramarines get a lot of flack for being the poster boys, and people complain a lot about the amount of attention Ultramarines get, but I do like Ultramarines because they are sort of the traditional benchmark of the Space Marines, really. But I am also a big fan of Orcs, because Orcs are just crazy. Tau. Ow, as they say up north. And Gene Stealers. Everybody likes Gene Stealers. So I've liked Gene Stealers since Space Hulk. Okie dokie. Right, still going. I don't want to sort of linger on these pictures too long. Freeze frame if there's something here that takes your fancy. I'm just chatting, really. Like I say, I could do a video that's 2 hours long. And you still wouldn't get to fully appreciate all the good stuff in this rulebook. More history. That's quite a classic piece of artwork. Yeah, more history and battles and stuff. There is only war. This is apparently so. There is only war. I think that means we are finally at the rules. Playing the game. And look, there's more of those people having a lovely time. Okay, so playing the game. This is the first page that actually gets to the meat of the rules. You get the core rules, starting on page 176. So 176 pages into this book, that's where you get your first taste of the actual rules. And then there are advanced rules starting on page 238. Now, that makes it sound like there's loads and loads of core rules. There's not. We'll get to that. But yeah, the core rules are the rules that you get in all the starter boxes. You get them in No Fear, you get them in First Strike. They come in the new Forge Bane box set, which is the box set that sort of features the Necrons. So they're the regular ones. So there's a little bit of introductory spiel, and then the core rules. So anybody who has any of the starter sets, this will be very familiar because it's the exact same layout. You've got the core rules, which covers movement, psychic phase. You will notice I've got a little ribbon just there because that's where the rules bit is. Not that I'm really planning on having this out on the table while I'm playing. I've got 2 other versions of the rules in much handier leaflet form. In fact, I've got 3. So these are your basic core rules. And there's like a really cool whole turn example, really nicely laid out, showing every single phase in very comprehensive format. You can pretty much read this page and have a very good gist of how the game works. That's how condensed and the rules are, and how straightforward. I really do like the 8th edition rule set. I think some people aren't so keen on the fact that it has been condensed the way it has been. But for me, I think it's a lovely rule set. I think it's very nice and pretty clean. There are situations where when you've condensed a massive game like this down into 8 pages, questions arise. There are moments where you sort of go, well, hold on a minute, what does that mean? And the answers just aren't there because the rules don't go into that level of detail. But there are frequent FAQs published, and I don't think it's anything game breaking. So Only War is where the core rules leaflets leave off with the starter sets. So everything for the rest of the book is kind of like the extra bits of rules that you don't get when you buy the starter sets, and that includes rules basically covering the different types of play. Open play, which is basically chuck some models on the table and then play one of these scenarios. Narrative play, which covers mission-based gaming, and again, there's a lot of scenarios in this rulebook. Cool thing about narratives is you can get access to stratagems, which is specific scenario-based special rules that you can pay command points to use as one-off boons. And then, again, there's quite a lot of scenarios for narrative play. Again, this is all stuff that isn't in those introductory books. That's a pretty picture. That's a really nice contrast in colours. And there's a bit about playing historical battles, and there's an example of a historical battle, the Ambush of Dork Pass. Then it goes into match play, which is where you build your armies based on points. If you're using point system, you do need to buy the codexes for the armies you're using, because they don't list those points anywhere else. However, a good thing about the new rules is, we go back here, is an example of a data sheet, and they have power limits, and you can actually use the power values as your points, basically, for creating your armies, and that's a good way of doing it. But personally, I'm a narrative player. Really, I like to recreate stories. That's kind of how I play a lot of the time, and I'm not too worried about balance and things like that. I have lots of board games and things that kind of aim for a very balanced type of environment, and when I'm doing tabletop gaming, I tend to just have a laugh and create stories, create adventures. So anyway, this is getting very long, this video, and I don't know if I'm saying anything interesting. What else we got? Yeah, match play. So then there's scenarios for match play for basically 2 armies of equal power facing off. And then we've got tactical objectives. Objectives come in certain scenarios, and you basically roll off on these charts, and they give you certain things to achieve. Like it might say, hold this specific objective on the battlefield, or it might say let's have a look over here. What have we got? Score a victory point if at least one enemy unit that can fly was destroyed. That sort of stuff. Score a victory point if at least one enemy character was destroyed during this turn. If 3 or more enemy characters were destroyed, score D3 victory points instead. So they're basically missions that within the course of your sort of straight up fist fight, you have little mini objectives that can help shape the course of the battle, which is quite cool. More scenario-y things. These are all using objectives and stratagems and things like that. And then we get to the advanced rules. So although it may seem like there's a massive amount of core rules here, there's not. Almost all of this are different types of scenarios and things like that. Your actual core rules are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 pages of core rules, and then a whole bunch of different ways to play. And that's different ways to play before you even get into the advanced rules. And these advanced rules, like I say, I'm not sure I'm really going to touch them that much. It covers sort of new ways to build your army as a battle-forged army that grants you different bonuses. And that goes on for quite some time. What else have we got in here? More cool stuff. Those guys are in trouble. Battlefield terrain. There are very basic terrain rules in the core rules. It sort of covers having a bit of extra protection for being in cover and affecting movement. But this actually gives you specific rules for each type of terrain you might have. So woods and ruins and barricades and obstacles and fuel pipes. I've got me some of those fuel pipes. And also, sort of talks about building your own terrain. And then there's special sort of battlefield rules. So if you want to have a fight at night, there's specific rules that can come into effect. If you decide with your opponent that you want to create something really interesting, so you can pick a narrative, and then on top of that you can layer in some battle zone rules and have a night fight. And you can really, a lot of these rules are about customizing the game experience to be what you want it to be. And then there's lots of scenarios again. More scenarios sort of that are based around environments. Like a bunker assault or attacking a city or having lots of ships. And that's it really. That's the end of the book. Oh, there's a section on running campaigns. But yeah, so that's almost all of these rules are for customization, for making the game your own. And that's what hobby gaming is all about. I mean, you buy a box of miniatures, you can assemble them based on the guide, or you can assemble them, you can make up your own. Once you've got used to it, you can mix and match parts and custom build parts. But even when you're following the instructions, often there's several ways that you can assemble models together. So you assemble the models the way you want them to be assembled, you paint them the way you want to paint them, and then you play games the way you want to play games. And that's what hobby gaming is. That's what hobby gaming gives you. It gives you those tools to do what you want, really. Do I recommend this rulebook? It depends. If you're new to hobby gaming, you don't need it. Any of the starter sets have got all the rules you need. But if you want to know more about the worlds, if you want to know more about the galaxy where all this is happening, if you want to have all those extra options and diving off points, springboards for ideas for things you want to do, you can't go wrong. It's a beautiful book and it's some good bedtime reading. And it's full of good content. So, yeah, I guess the decision, whether that's right for you or not, well, that's your decision to make, isn't it? Thank you for listening. I have gone on far longer than I intended to, so if you're still with me at this point, thank you very much, and I will see you all again. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.